Hello everyone, Halo Flashpoint is a fast-paced, alternating action skirmish tabletop game representing the PvP mode of the computer game Halo. You have your 4 Spartans per side, you have weapon pickups, your shields that regen, and you even respawn when you die, so you're never truly out of the fight. But instead of needing the kind of fast reflexes that burn out by the time you hit your mid-20s, this is more about strategy, dice and fun. Oh, and who doesn't want to have the models of the game characters they used to own? This Recon edition here of Halo is more board game than war game, as everything is basically ready to go out of the box. If you find yourself thinking this is a really cool new sci-fi universe that Mantic has created, then I don't know how to communicate with you. We're talking a different language. Everybody knows that Halo is of course a great TV series first and foremost, an epic 20+ novel series secondly, and then was finally adapted into a computer game 21 years before those two things. Oh, and while we're discussing Halo, if you decide you really like it, keep in mind that it shares the same rule set as Mantic's Dead Zone. Now with Dead Zone you have to build and paint the models, and there's hundreds of possible team loadouts you could build. But the core rules are so similar that you could even play your Spartans against any of the Dead Zone factions. But enough about the game, let's learn to play so you can see if this game is for you. When learning a game for the first time in this day and age, I like to think of the core 4 things that you need to know to play the game. How to read a card, how to move, how to roll dice, and how to start the game. Let's cover these basics for Halo Flashpoint, and by the end of this video, you will be able to play your first game, and thanks to the simplicity of these rules, you'll have 90% of the game sorted. To help you figure it all out, of course, Mantic has done this brilliant thing where they print all the rules you need to know on the tutorial side of the mat that came with the box, giving you the perfect tutorial game if you're a bit intimidated by reading all 46 pages of the manual. Step 1 in any game is, what am I looking at? How to read a profile, a weapon stat line, a data card. If you've played any wargame before, there's really only one stat you need explained, everything else makes sense. You need to know why the move stat has a dash and a second number. But let's go over this whole thing as if you're brand new to this wargame board game hybrid. We start with the data card, 6 main stats and the weapons we spawn in with. At the top we have the unit's name, and beneath that any keywords relevant to it. All Spartans have energy shield 2, so you would put 2 shield tokens on its name. This picture of course shows you the unit and is also a clear space where you can put any status effect tokens or such. Then we get to the numbers. Speed has 2 numbers. The first is how far you move with an advance. The second is how far you move with a sprint. Ranged is the number you need to roll on your dice to hit when you make a ranged attack. Fight is the number you need to roll when you make a melee attack. Survive is the number you need to roll whenever you make a survive test. Armor is how many points of damage you natively stop from any attack. HP is how many wounds you need to take to kill you. And weapons all follow a few key points. The name, its range, armor piercing, which is how many points of armor you can ignore, and then the keywords, of which there are 41 in the game, so you just have to memorize those, I guess. And that's a data card. Fairly simple. Before we get to moving, what can you actually do in Halo? What are the actions? What actions can you perform? How can you interact with the board? Thanks for asking. Halo works with a pretty standard action system of short and long actions. Every model can perform either 2 short actions or 1 long action, and you can't perform the same short action twice. Certain things in the game allow you to perform more than 2 actions and the same action twice, like for example your command dice or certain keywords. Short actions are advance your first speed stat, shoot, crouch and stand up, and auxiliary action, which is basically just any other action in the game. Which you might think would include picking something up like a weapon, but picking up weapons and items are free and happen by your choice as you move over them. The 2 long actions are assault and sprint. Sprint being move your second move stat. Brilliant! Let's move into moving. This is a brilliant part of the game engine, and it's really very simple. You have a grid on your board and you can move on it. You only need the center of your base to be within the grid you're moving into. If your move is 2, you move into any cube next to yours twice. Easy. Climbing is exactly the same. There is no negative to going up in the cube stack. You can move diagonally as well, again with no penalty. Terrain affects moving, of course. If a piece of terrain is taking up half or less of a cube, then you can just move past it. If it's a solid wall, you can't. But if that solid wall is in the middle of a grid instead of on the grid line, then you could move as you have access to the whole grid and your terrain doesn't have to be placed on grid lines. If you want to climb, there does need to be a climbable surface for you to move onto when you stop on top, so you can't climb a razor thin wall, for example. Now, when moving diagonally, you check to see if it's a legal move by moving orthogonally, but it only costs 1 to move there despite checking the route through 2 cubes. And that's movement. Really quick and easy, and the only thing that takes time to learn is for your first few moves, you stop and ask yourself, wait, is that legal? Is that really how this works? And the answer is yes, it's really that easy, go for it. Which brings us, of course, onto the fight action, where we learn about the basics of rolling dice. Halo is a dice pool based system which works around a 3 dice roll. If there are no buffs or nerfs to your test, you roll 3 dice, aiming for your target number of ranged, fight or save. In any roll that is attacking or defending, you get headshots, also called crits or exploding 8s. That means if you roll an 8, you get to make an additional roll. And yes, that 8 can also explode. So let's look at the fight action. You have a melee weapon and its range is CC, which means you need to be in the same cube as your enemy. Even if your bases are touching but you're in the next cube over, that's not CC range. The attacker gathers their 3 dice and checks their fight stat, in this case it's a 4+. We check for modifiers. These are very easy. Basically, did you charge? Do you have a friend? Is the enemy injured? Was the enemy pinned at the start of this action? That's it, those are your 4 modifier checks. For this fight, we're saying no to all, so we roll 3 dice. We get a crit, a hit, and a miss. The first thing we do is we roll the additional dice from the crit, which gives us another hit. We have no keywords giving us rerolls, so the enemy rolls their survive test, which is a 5+. Modifiers for this are, do you have a friend in your cube, and is the attacker injured? No to both, we roll and save 1. The 1 save knocks out 1 attack, leaving the attack with 2 successes. Now, if there were no keywords, that would mean we knock out 2 shields, which always take the damage first, and the fight ends. But we have keywords. We have ESD1. ESD1 is Energy Shield Depleter 1. That means that if any hits are taken, the ESD comes into effect first, and it automatically removes 1 shield. That happens first. Then we resolve 1 of our damage on the second shield. With the shields depleted, we go through to the HP. However, Spartans have 2 armor. Unlike shields, which regen 1 at the start of each turn, armor is never removed and always reduces incoming attacks by its amount for every attack. So normally, this final success would deal 1 damage which gets absorbed by armor and no damage would be taken. But our combat blades are perfect Spartan killers as they have AP 2, which of course means that we ignore 2 armor. So our AP kicks in, we bypass the 2 armor and manage to deal 1 wound onto the enemy. As soon as the model takes 1 wound, they count as injured, which, as we saw earlier, can affect dice pools and interact with keywords. But of course, you can charge an enemy. This will give you that sweet +2 modifier to your assault roll. You make an advance or sprint action and end in the enemy cube, boom, +2 dice, it's that easy. Which brings us to the shoot action. The core of this is the same as the fight action, but with 2 differences. Your range is anywhere from 1 to 6, meaning you can attack from outside of the same cube as your enemy, and the modifiers are different. To find the range, it's as easy as you think. We count the cubes. This gun has range 4, it's an easy shot. Does the enemy have cover? If yes, there's no modifier. If they don't, then it's a clear shot, which means +2 dice. Line of sight, very easy. Imagine your model's base extends to the top of its head, so it's a cylinder. Can you see any part of this cylinder from where your model's cylinder is? If yes, you can shoot. If any part of this cylinder is covered at all from your cylinder, then it gets cover and it won't be a clear shot. It's all done on a dynamic model-to-model basis, and in general your board should be very dense, and getting a clear shot should be due to your good positioning, not a lack of terrain. But for this roll, we positioned well and moved into a position where the enemy is not in cover, and so we get +2 to our roll. We also are above the enemy, so we get +1 dice for high ground. We also crouched, so we are +1 dice. But that means we moved and crouched to get to such a good shot, and that's 2 of our short actions used, leaving us unable to shoot. Luckily, we have command dice, and so we are able to use 1 command dice per activation and do that now. This gives us a free shoot action with our activation. More on command dice in the setup guide. So we are 3 dice base, +2 for clear shot, +1 for high ground, +1 for crouched. We also have the keyword optics, which gives us an additional dice and means that we get crits on 7s, great. We roll, and after rolling our additional crits and end up with 6 hits. The enemy rolls their survive test. They don't get any bonus as they haven't crouched. They block one success, leaving us with 5 successes. We apply them to the enemy. The shields are still down from the last attack, so we don't need to worry about them. We have no AP and the enemy has 2 armor, so our first 2 successes are removed by armor. We can then apply our successes, which gives us 3 wounds, which is exactly what we needed to kill the enemy. We remove the enemy from the board, discard any upgrades he may have had, refresh his shields and keep his order token with him for when he respawns. And within those 15 minutes, you have learned how to play Halo Flashpoint. Of course, there are more nuances to it, and I for one am really excited to see what future releases and proper list building and additional factions bring to the game. But for now, we're, not quite done. Because it's great that you know how to roll dice and move models, but you need to know how to set up a game. If you can't start the game, it doesn't matter if you know what to do in the middle of it. Let's show you very quickly how to start a game of Slayer. This is your standard deathmatch. Firstly, place your terrain. The more the better, seriously. Again, clear shots should be rare. Take one of each data card, which means in the recon version of the game you'll have 2 identical teams. Slayer doesn't have any objective markers, but does have items, weapons and spawn points. Items are shuffled face down and placed randomly by rolling 2d8s, with 1 being the row and 1 being the column. Randomly place 8 items. Spawn locations are defined on the deployment map, so place those now. We then place weapons. There are always 4 weapon drops. These weapon drop markers are placed as defined by the deployment map, and the way these work is that at the start of each round we select one of our weapons and roll a d8 and then place that weapon face up on the relevant marker. With the board set up to decide who goes first, it's a simple roll off and whoever rolls higher is the starting player. They pick a deployment zone and then place all of your models on the board. You can only have 2 of your models in a cube, up to a total of 4 including your opponent's models. At the start of the round you roll your command dice. This is a default of 2 dice, but note that if any of them have the keyword tactician, that will be an additional command dice. These dice allow you to perform 3 actions within your own activations, like the extra shoot we saw earlier. You can also fight, advance, move a second model before your opponent moves one of theirs, etc. The only thing left for you to know to play the game is to memorize 41 keywords and 13 items. And that is Halo Flashpoint done and dusted. A successful attempt at bringing the fast-paced action of Halo PvP to the tabletop. A rule system I think we can all agree that we hope catches on and opens people up not just to Halo Flashpoint, but also maybe even Dead Zone if they want a bit more variety in their game. Thanks for watching, finger guns, bye.